This is not a how-to video, but I will show you how I went from this to this and eventually even to this. In the last video we worked on finishing our tabletop, and now it's time to work on the next chapter, making the metal table base. And like the professional designer I am, I went on the interwebs to look for inspiration. But one thing I always found with these table bases is that I always bump my legs into them, so I wanted to opt for a different design. And this is what I came up with. It consists of two parallelograms, and one is mirrored from the other side, and they're welded together using lap joints. This should comfortably sit 6 people without anyone bumping their knees on the frame. The frame consists of steel box section 100 by 50 mm, which I had to buy in 6 meter lengths from an industrial supplier. I broke them down into 3 meter lengths so that I could transport them back to the workshop, and I laid out each individual piece according to my design. I calculated that I needed 11 meters of length in total, and I only had 12 meters to work with, so I knew this was going to be tricky, and there was very little room for error. Despite making a few wrong cuts, I just about managed to scrap everything together and have just enough material to finish the table base. After marking all my angles, I headed to the bandsaw and started cutting. Now this isn't a particularly fancy bandsaw, it comes from China in fact, and it had some limitations. As you can see here, it did not manage to cut the box section completely, so I had to improvise. Working with long lengths, I also had to come up with clever solutions to keep the beams level while I cut them. I used an online website called OptiCutter to optimize my cut list and make sure I used the most amount of my materials. I had to come up with last minute changes because the angles that I derived from my 3D drawing were actually inversed, so I had to modify them last minute. In order to cut the notches, I made this little setup to use with my plasma cutter. This made quick work of cutting the lap joints quickly and accurately. At this point, I was feeling pretty confident. I did my research, I did my planning, and everything went smoothly. That feeling, however, would quickly fade away. After cutting and notching each individual part, it was time to tack everything together. However, at this time I was using a very cheap welder with flux core wire, and my tacks were just not holding up. Everything was falling apart and I was really struggling to assemble everything. After struggling for a long time and tweaking my machine settings and looking online for tips on how to get a better result, I quickly gave up and realized that this was not going to work. Now I'm not by all means a metal worker, and I'm not a good welder at all. Actually, this is my most ambitious project so far. So I did the most obvious thing. I went out and got the best welder possible to make sure this project was going to succeed. Luckily, I knew just where to go.
A few moments later.
Luckily for me, my landlord used to have a car body repair shop, and he had this most amazing welder. I'm not lying when I say that this was an absolute game changer. The amount of force and power that came from this machine was absolutely stunning. Even with my limited welding skills, everything was stacking together so easily and the metal was flowing. I was so happy. In Dutch we have a saying that loosely translates like this: even if you give a monkey a golden ring, it's still going to remain an ugly monkey. Now in this reference, of course, I'm the monkey, and this welder is a golden ring. Even though I'm not a good welder at all, everything was coming together so easily, and even though my miters were not perfect, This $5,000 beast of a welding machine quickly made up for my lack in skills. But enough of me talking. I'm just gonna play some clips of the progress of me welding this frame together, and I hope you enjoy. And if you do, please like this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel. It really keeps me motivated to keep making videos like these and make a fool out of myself on the internet. Okay, all jokes aside, we still have a frame to build. Now my initial idea was to powder coat this frame, but when I looked around it was so expensive, so I landed up on a paint instead. It was by a company called Metalrite and it's a textured paint. My idea was to spray paint it on, so I quickly set up a party tent and hoisted the table with the forklift inside. But when I started spraying, everything got covered in dust, so I quickly ditched that idea and simply rolled it on. It took a few coats to get the desired coverage and texture that I wanted, but ultimately it looked really nice. And here's the final result, followed by some shots on the table in its final resting place, inside my new house. If you haven't checked the previous video where I built the table top, go check it out, I'll pin the video in the comments. If not, I want to thank you so much for watching this video. Please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. It really keeps me motivated to keep making videos like this. Thank you for watching and see you in the next one.